To celebrate New Who's 90th anniversary and the revival coming back to the TV screens, I want to talk about the Ninth Doctor, and more importantly, how his era is pretty underrated, and maybe for some of the reasons of why. And when I say this Doctor's underrated, I don't mean that people don't notice him at all, I just feel like he deserves a bit of recognition. Christopher Eccleston's Ninth Doctor set the tone for all New Who Doctors going forward, with the plot of the Time War and how he acted as the Doctor being led on by several other actors. And I feel like it's important to recognise that, instead of the narrative a lot of the time saying we're going to skip Series 1 and Christopher Eccleston and go straight into David Tennant's era, because Christopher Eccleston's Ninth Doctor is incredibly important and characterised the New Who Doctor.
I refused to admit your existence, and even when it named you, I wouldn't believe it. But it was right. I know where you're from. Forgive me for intruding, but it's remarkable that you even exist. I just want to say how sorry I am.
It needs to be recognised how much emotion Christopher Eccleston brought to the Ninth Doctor and the Doctor in general. He characterised the Ninth Doctor and the Doctors going forwards, how they would react to the Time War and how they were in general. He set the tone for the new Doctors going forward, and it's of my personal belief that a lot of people maybe overlook his series or even skip it in favour of going into straight with David Tennant because he only had one series. He only had one series, and a lot of people would rather get stuck in with David Tennant rather than this one Doctor who was there for one series, which is genuinely unfortunate. His portrayal of the Doctor is one of the best out there. He's a great Doctor, great emotional depth, and there's some great episodes there. And I feel like a lot of people going into Doctor Who sort of skip this series and overlook him.
But I can't die. Tell me I can't. I haven't even been born yet. It's impossible for me to die. Isn't it?
I'm sorry.
It's also worth noting that when the show came back in 2005, 19 years ago, the Ninth Doctor, Christopher Eccleston's Doctor, was a lot more grounded than his predecessors, mainly focusing on Colin Baker and Sylvester McCoy, but as well, of course, saying that their eras were darker, but not because of the Doctors themselves. Colin Baker's portrayal of the Doctor was very colourful, and Sylvester McCoy was floating on a bunch of clouds. Not saying that their Doctors couldn't pull off Sirius, because they definitely did, but this Doctor was a lot more grounded. Even what he wore was a lot more grounded, with the leather black jacket being a lot more grounded. Overall, Christopher Eccleston's Ninth Doctor was a lot more grounded, a lot more serious, downright to the emotion that he portrayed. And the Time War of course helped with that. It gave him a narrative to push, and this Doctor pulled it off. Christopher Eccleston pulled off this narrative extremely well. He sold the Time War as something that happened. In Series 1 we never saw any of the Time War. We saw the effects of the Time War and the Daleks and how that felt on the Doctor, but that's what made it feel so real. Christopher Eccleston's performance as the Doctor and how emotional and angry he got talking about it, how sad, is what made the Time War seem real. And he did a great job at it and set the tone across the whole of New Who. And I genuinely believe if Christopher Eccleston had one more season as the Ninth Doctor, a lot of fans would recognise him more, understand his character more, give him a chance, because a lot of people don't. Of course, fans of the show, they love Christopher Eccleston, but a lot of people going into it skip his season, don't really look at him as well as other Doctors, and it's unfortunate, because arguably he has one of the best portrayals in the show of the Doctor, and I think if he had more of a chance to show this, a lot of people would agree. And I think his episodes are great, but this would have just helped cement him as one of the best Doctors ever. I also think what doesn't help looking back at this era is straight after Christopher Eccleston's Ninth Doctor regenerated into the 10th Doctor, was that David Tennant's 10th Doctor got everything from that Doctor. He got his sonic screwdriver, TARDIS, and companion. So a lot of people associate all those things with the 10th Doctor's run, because not only did he have more series, but a lot more people know of the 10th Doctor, have watched that era, and associate things with him. He is more iconic overall and more well known. So unfortunately, when fans go into watching the show, they just associate the things that Christopher Eccleston's Doctor brought in with David Tennant. And unfortunately, that's just how it is. And it's a damn shame, because I feel like he just deserves a lot more credit as the Doctor. The issue is, when you inherit a lot of stuff from a previous Doctor and then become one of the most popular Doctors, most people are going to associate that stuff with that Doctor instead of his original Doctor. A case that doesn't really follow this is when the 12th Doctor inherited a lot of stuff from the 11th Doctor. His screwdriver didn't really take, and the TARDIS was slightly different, and people didn't really get used to that TARDIS interior with 11 anyway. Where here, it's a completely different story, and unfortunately it's a bit overlooked. Not saying this applies to all fans, but new fans of the show who want to get into the show sort of overlook this. But also, just speaking about this era in general for the 9th Doctor, it brought some iconic stuff. It brought some iconic villains. The Slitheen, although they might be a bit silly, are some iconic villains that a lot of fans know. They were seen a lot in the Sarah Jane Adventures, and these villains are great. There's a lot of great villains in this series that, again, I feel like maybe get a bit overlooked, which is unfortunate, because I feel like the series 1 of Doctor Who is probably one of the best new Who series, and it does get overlooked a little bit. And again, I've got to emphasize this because I know people will be highlighting this. This isn't all fans, this isn't all people trying to get into the show, but I feel like this is the vocal minority at the moment, and I feel like seeing it as this came out 19 years ago, it's important to highlight that this series exists, and especially with the show sort of being quote-unquote rebooted yet again with a brand new Series 1 for Disney.
Oh, fantastic! Powerless! Look, the great space dustbin. How does it feel? What for? What are you going to do to me? If you can't kill, then what are you good for, Dalek? What's the point of you? You're nothing!
Christopher Eccleston defined what it meant to be the Doctor for New Who. The other Doctors followed suit and took what made his Doctor great and expanded on it. And I feel like a lot more credit needs to go to him. It's been 19 years since New Who came out, and Series 1 holds up. It's a great series. It's a great series of television in general, and a great series of Doctor Who. People definitely need to go back and rewatch this and watch it from the beginning again, because you realise how impactful the 9th Doctor's Doctor is on the whole show in general, and how it eventually turned out to be. This Doctor is great, and I just wish that people, especially newer fans coming into the show, would give Christopher Eccleston a chance. If people are watching this and they haven't seen Doctor Who yet and they've got to this point, please watch Christopher Eccleston's series. Please watch the 9th Doctor. Starting with the 9th Doctor is great. It sets the tone for the show, and he is what made Series 1 such a good show. Of course, Billy Piper and our alternate factors there made it even better, but he made it so good and characterized the Doctor in such a great way.
And why can't we go?
Maybe you will, and maybe I will, but not like this.
You're not making sense.
I might never make sense again. I might have 2 heads, or no head. Imagine me with no head. And don't say that's an improvement. But it's a bit dodgy, this process. You never know what you're going to end up with.